In a quiet, cluttered house, a young boy sat at a small wooden table, clutching a torn piece of paper that his mother had hurriedly ripped in frustration. The paper was no ordinary note. It was a letter, a fragile remnant of hope and disappointment, torn in half amid a whirlwind of emotion. For most, such a fragment might be dismissed as insignificant, but for him, it became a catalyst, an unspoken promise of something greater buried beneath the chaos. His mother's voice, strained with worry and exhaustion, echoed in the back of his mind as he looked at the jagged edges of the torn letter, realizing that this act of destruction was not born out of malice, but from a desperate need to shield him from the harsh realities she faced daily. That torn letter in its broken state would later become a symbol of resilience, a silent yet powerful message that would shape his entire future. Growing up in an environment riddled with hardship and uncertainty, he learned early that life often dealt cards far from what one might expect. The torn letter was a stark reminder of the fragile lines that separated comfort from adversity, stability from chaos. Yet, rather than sinking into despair, he found a flicker of curiosity ignited by the very act of tearing and rewriting. It was as if he sensed that beneath that broken paper lay an untold story, a story that he could choose to rewrite in his own way. This moment, seemingly insignificant, planted a seed within him, the understanding that even shattered beginnings could give rise to something extraordinary if approached with tenacity and vision. Life, he realized, was not about avoiding the cracks, but learning how to build anew from them. As years passed, that torn letter became a metaphor for his journey. Like the fragile paper, his circumstances often threatened to rip him apart, whether through financial struggles, societal expectations, or personal doubts. But each challenge only heightened his resolve to find meaning in the broken fragments of his past. He learned to see opportunity where others saw defeat, transforming setbacks into stepping stones. What started as a childhood of limited resources gradually evolved into a relentless pursuit of innovation, fueled by an understanding that the greatest breakthroughs often emerge from the most imperfect beginnings. His story was no longer about simply surviving, but about rewriting the narrative, turning scars into strengths and setbacks into setups for comebacks. Throughout this journey, he discovered that the true power lay in perspective. The torn letter had, in its own way, become a blueprint, an initial draft that he would later revise and refine. Every obstacle, every tear in his life, became part of the story he told himself about resilience and purpose. It was in those moments of apparent destruction that he found the spark to rebuild, sometimes from scratch, sometimes by patching the old with something new. The paper, once torn apart, was transformed into a symbol of the art of reinvention, a reminder that even the most fractured beginnings can forge paths to unimaginable success. This narrative, grounded in hardship but driven by hope, sets the stage for a deeper exploration of how one man's story of loss, love, and relentless ambition became the foundation of a billion-dollar empire, all rooted in a torn letter that nobody else seemed to see as anything more than discarded paper. The act of tearing that letter was not merely an impulsive gesture of frustration. It embodied a deeper rebellion against despair and the limitations imposed by circumstances. It symbolized a conscious decision to break free from the constraints of a narrative that seemed to confine him, to reject the notion that fate was predetermined by external hardships. Instead, he viewed that broken piece of paper as an invitation to forge his own path, regardless of the fragments life had already dealt him. This perspective is crucial. It underscores how adversity can serve as a catalyst for innovation when approached with deliberate intent. Now consider how this applies when faced with obstacles that threaten your sense of purpose. Instead of succumbing to the weight of setbacks, recognize each challenge as an opportunity to reshape your story. Like that torn letter, imperfections can be transformed into uniquely personal blueprints for progress if approached with a mindset rooted in possibility. Furthermore, as that young boy grew older, he began to understand the importance of deliberate reinterpretation. The torn paper became more than a symbol of struggle. It evolved into a tool for introspection. He started to analyze how the tears, those moments of disruption, created space for new ideas and strategies. In the same way, setbacks in entrepreneurship often come with destructive emotions, doubt, frustration, or regret. Yet, by consciously shifting focus, A person can view these interruptions as chances to redesign their approach, to reframe failures as stepping stones rather than dead ends. It's akin to a sculptor chipping away at marble. What appears to be damage initially becomes an integral part of the masterpiece when viewed through a different lens. With this in mind, your capacity to reimagine problems, to see opportunities in disruption, constitutes a vital skill for anyone striving to innovate or grow beyond setbacks. Transforming adversity into a new beginning also demands an openness to experimentation. The young man learned that the true value of the torn letter wasn't in its initial state but in what he chose to do afterward. Did he discard it entirely? Or did he reassemble the pieces into something purposeful? This choice, to reconstruct or repurpose, mirrors the entrepreneurial process, iterating from failure, testing new concepts, or pivoting when the original plan falters. Each torn edge becomes a metaphor for the flexibility needed to adapt when conditions shift unexpectedly. To implement this, you must develop resilience to accept that the solution often does not present itself immediately. Instead, breakthroughs tend to emerge from persistent tinkering, from the willingness to reconfigure what was once considered broken. Embracing experimentation as a fundamental strategy unlocks hidden potential in what initially appears to be irreparable damage. Another critical layer involves understanding that the symbolic act of tearing is also an act of intentional destruction, an act that clears space for rebuilding. This concept echoes the idea that to make room for something new, one must sometimes let go of the old. For the young entrepreneur, that meant shedding limiting beliefs, outdated approaches, or fear of failure. Conversely, it may involve physically removing obstacles that impede progress, such as inefficient processes or unproductive alliances. The key lies in recognizing when existing structures no longer serve growth and having the courage to dismantle them intentionally. This process, deliberate destruction, fosters clarity, enabling a sharper focus on what truly matters. Ultimately, it creates a fertile ground for innovation, similar to fallowing a piece of land to prepare it for fruitful planting. Armed with this understanding, entrepreneurs can cultivate resilience not only by enduring hardships, but by actively embracing change as an essential part of evolution. Now, consider how this mindset of transforming brokenness into opportunity impacts leadership. A leader who has internalized the lesson of that torn letter understands that setbacks are inevitable but not defining. Instead, they become catalysts for learning and growth, inspiring others to view adversity through a lens of potential rather than defeat. Such a leader approaches obstacles as opportunities for collective reinvention, a chance to rally teams around a shared purpose of renewal. This perspective fosters an environment where experimentation is valued and mistakes are reframed as essential steps toward mastery. When leaders exemplify this philosophy, they demonstrate that the true power lies in how one responds to rupture. By doing so, they cultivate resilience, not just within themselves, but across entire organizations, empowering everyone to see failures as integral to the process of innovation and progress. Consequently, the ideology rooted in that torn letter becomes a blueprint for cultivating a culture where transformation from adversity is not merely encouraged, but expected. This exploration reveals that the essence of turning a torn letter into a life-changing blueprint is rooted in the deliberate choice to reframe and rebuild, to see beyond immediate damage, and to leverage disruption as a catalyst for growth. It emphasizes the importance of mindset, adopting a perspective that views adversity not as an end, but as a beginning. This principle, when embodied, becomes a powerful force that fuels ongoing evolution, encouraging continuous reinvention and resilience in the face of any setback. Building upon the notion that disruption can serve as a fertile ground for innovation, it's vital to recognize how a flexible mindset extends beyond mere reaction to setbacks. It actively anticipates the emergence of obstacles as opportunities for strategic repositioning. In the unpredictable landscape of entrepreneurship, change often arrives disguised as chaos. By cultivating an anticipatory awareness, training oneself to see potential in emerging challenges, one can develop a proactive approach rather than a purely reactive stance. This involves constantly scanning the environment for signals of shifts, understanding that every disturbance carries within it the seed of a new frontier. For instance, market fluctuations or technological disruptions shouldn't be viewed solely as threats, but as signals prompting reevaluation of current models. Embracing this perspective transforms vulnerability into vigilance. sharpening instincts to identify avenues that competitors might overlook because they're too focused on defending their existing territory. Recognizing opportunity in chaos becomes a strategic advantage. The ability to pivot quickly, seize emerging niches, or reconfigure resources before others even perceive the need. Furthermore, this mindset fosters a culture of continuous learning within organizations. When a leader perceives every disruption as a chance to gather new insights, it shifts collective effort from damage control to experimentation. This requires cultivating an environment where questioning old assumptions is encouraged, and failures are seen as instructive rather than shameful. For example, some of the most groundbreaking innovations stem from deliberate attempts to challenge entrenched practices, often directly arising from environments that tolerate risk and error. Here, the emphasis shifts from avoiding mistakes to extracting lessons from them. Such an approach transforms the very fabric of organizational resistance to change. It becomes less about guarding what already exists and more about constantly refining and expanding the horizons of what can be achieved. Leaders who foster this mentality equip their teams to view uncertainty not as an obstacle, but as a catalyst for creative problem solving, ultimately elevating the entire venture's adaptive capacity. Another perspective worth exploring is how this openness to transformation informs personal resilience. When faced with setbacks, it's natural to experience disappointment or even self-doubt. However, developing the ability to detach emotional reactions from the immediate aftermath of failure allows one to analyze the situation objectively, recognizing that setbacks are often profound feedback systems, offering insight into blind spots or weaknesses, encourages a reframing of these moments as vital growth points. Consider a startup founder who encounters a significant funding rejection. Instead of perceiving it solely as a rejection, they might analyze what it reveals about their pitch, market assumptions, or product positioning. This analytical approach converts emotional pain into strategic refinement, boosting future chances of success. It broadens the definition of resilience from merely enduring hardship to actively extracting value from every difficult experience, thus creating a resilient mindset that persists regardless of external circumstances. Additionally, the depth of this perspective reveals itself in how one manages resources during turbulent periods. When upheaval strikes, immediate financial or operational constraints intensify, forcing rapid decision-making. Here, a resilient mindset involves the ability to prioritize selectively, channeling scarce resources into areas with the highest potential for leverage. It's akin to a gardener pruning a tangled bush, removing overgrowth to allow healthy branches to flourish. This strategic trimming doesn't weaken the plant. It enables growth where it's most sustainable. Similarly, in business, pruning extraneous projects or halting initiatives that no longer align with core goals can generate momentum. This approach demands clarity, focus, and an openness to relinquishing control over some areas in favor of investing in those with the greatest possibility for renewal. By doing so, one creates space for innovation to take root, even amidst chaos, transforming resource scarcity from a limiting factor into a catalyst for sharpened focus. Now consider how this deliberate approach extends into personal development. When faced with adversity, the temptation often lies in retreat or denial. Instead, embracing it as part of ongoing growth involves actively seeking discomfort as a source of strength. This means deliberately stepping outside comfort zones, knowing that true transformation often occurs at the edge of uncertainty. For instance, taking on a challenging new project without guaranteed success fosters resilience that becomes embedded in one's identity. Each time you confront discomfort head-on, you reinforce mental agility and trust in your capacity to adapt. Over time, this habitual engagement with difficulty transforms the fear of failure into a familiarity, an understanding that setbacks are simply feedback for recalibration. Such internal resilience then radiates outward, influencing how others perceive and respond to change, creating a ripple effect that amplifies the capacity to thrive amidst upheaval. Ultimately, this comprehensive openness to transformation, viewing disruption not as a threat but as an intrinsic part of growth, entwines with every facet of entrepreneurial life. It demands continual recalibration of strategies, sharpening of instincts, and deepening of personal resolve. It challenges ingrained assumptions, urging a persistent search for innovation where others see dead ends. Positioned at the intersection of adaptability and foresight, this mindset becomes a powerful force, a magnetic pull toward unseen opportunities and unexplored territories. The courage to navigate these turbulent waters, to see beyond immediate chaos, and to craft new pathways transforms mere survival into the art of thriving amid continual change. Building upon the core idea that embracing disruption catalyzes innovation, it's crucial to recognize that mastering this mindset requires cultivating a nuanced awareness of one's own cognitive biases. When faced with upheaval, the tendency to cling to familiar patterns of thinking can hinder genuine adaptation. Recognizing one's mental filters, such as optimism bias, where one underestimates the severity of risks, or confirmation bias, which leads to only acknowledging information that supports existing beliefs, is essential for navigating change effectively. Developing a disciplined practice of questioning assumptions, actively seeking dissenting viewpoints, and deliberately exposing oneself to contrasting opinions helps break these mental shackles. By doing so, you not only expand your perception, but also sharpen your capacity to perceive subtle signals of opportunity that others might overlook due to their rigid mental frameworks. This mental agility becomes a vital weapon in transforming chaos from a stumbling block into a launch pad for fresh ideas and strategic pivots. Simultaneously, the importance of emotional literacy in this context cannot be overstated. When chaos erupts, it often elicits visceral reactions, fear, frustration, overconfidence, that distort judgment and cloud decision-making. Developing a mental toolkit to manage these emotional responses with clarity and discipline is paramount. Techniques such as mindfulness or reflective pauses create space between stimulus and reaction, enabling you to assess situations coldly and strategically rather than impulsively. For example, imagine receiving news of a sudden market collapse. Instead of reacting in panic, a leader skilled in emotional regulation will analyze the core issues, distinguish between immediate panic and long-term potential, and respond with calculated adjustments. This capacity to maintain composure under pressure fosters trust among team members and encourages a culture where rational, innovative solutions are prioritized above reactive measures. It transforms emotional turbulence into a source of insight rather than chaos, empowering you to steer through storms with a steadiness that inspires confidence. Another vital but often overlooked facet is the application of systemic thinking to disruption. Instead of viewing change as isolated incidents, it's necessary to perceive the surrounding ecosystem as an interconnected web of influences, constraints, and opportunities. This perspective reveals cyclical patterns and leverage points that may not be obvious at first glance. For instance, a sudden regulatory change might seem to threaten existing operations, but when viewed systemically, it could open pathways for differentiation or niche specialization. By mapping out the wider network, partners, consumers, industry trends, you can identify points where small adjustments cascade into significant shifts. This way of thinking prevents reactive, surface-level responses and encourages strategic interventions that ripple positively through the entire system. Harnessing this interconnected awareness transforms reactions to disruption into proactive re-engineering, positioning you ahead of competitors who remain fixated on immediate threats rather than systemic opportunities. Furthermore, embracing disruption effectively involves a willingness to experiment with unorthodox approaches, even when conventional wisdom suggests caution. Now consider how this applies when you recognize that the path to innovation often involves stepping into uncertainty without a guaranteed outcome. It's about designing small, rapid experiments, akin to a scientist testing hypotheses in a lab, whose purpose is to gather real-world data rather than to guarantee a perfect solution right away. This iterative process minimizes risk exposure while maximizing learning. For example, roll out a minimal viable product with a select customer segment, observe feedback, then refine before scaling up. This approach transforms the fear of failure into a strategic advantage. Each iteration provides valuable insights that inform subsequent steps, reducing uncertainty gradually. By adopting a mindset that values learning over immediate success, you create a fertile environment for breakthrough ideas to emerge from the ashes of failure. Lastly, the most resilient entrepreneurs understand that the process of transformation requires a compelling vision that can serve as a guiding star amidst chaos. This vision acts as an anchor, providing clarity and purpose when external conditions shift unpredictably. It's not enough to respond to change actively. One must also internalize a vivid picture of what success looks like in a transformed landscape. This mental model helps prioritize initiatives, align teams, and sustain motivation through turbulent periods. The challenge lies in balancing flexibility with focus, remaining open to course adjustments without losing sight of the core aspiration. For instance, a company that aims to revolutionize sustainable energy must continually adapt to technological breakthroughs, policy changes, and market dynamics, while maintaining a strong conviction in its ultimate goal. This unwavering sense of purpose energizes decision-making, attracts talent aligned with the mission, and reinforces resilience at every level. Cultivating this internal compass ensures that even as external conditions shift and threaten to derail progress, the fundamental vision remains intact, motivating continuous innovation and adaptation. Focusing solely on the internal landscape of vision, one discovers that clarity isn't static, but a fluid, evolving process, demanding perpetual refinement. A compelling vision acts as a mental lighthouse. It's not merely a destination, but a living map that must be recalibrated as new terrain emerges. Now consider how a foggy window obscures the view. The more you wipe away the mist, the clearer your perspective becomes. However, this cleaning isn't a one-time effort. It's an ongoing ritual of mental sweeping, removing the sediment of doubt, distraction, and complacency that accumulates over time. When faced with volatile environments, this continuous sharpening of purpose ensures your internal compass remains aligned, preventing drift into confusion or stagnation. The true mastery lies in cultivating the discipline to revisit and question your underlying assumptions, ensuring that your long-term aspirations evolve in tandem with shifting realities. This process of constant reassessment transforms a static goal into a dynamic, resilient beacon, capable of guiding through turbulent waters. Building on this, however, requires a nuanced awareness of how internal biases subtly distort the clarity of vision. Human perception is susceptible to a myriad of distortions, favoring familiar patterns while dismissing disruptive signals. Recognizing these subtle filters demands a deep level of self-awareness, often rooted in a willingness to face uncomfortable truths about one's own limitations. This might involve engaging in honest dialogues with trusted confidants, seeking out contrarian viewpoints, or deliberately placing oneself in unfamiliar scenarios that challenge ingrained beliefs. For example, a leader convinced of a particular strategy might overlook evidence suggesting a different approach is more effective. By actively confronting these cognitive blind spots, individuals create space for fresh insights to surface. It's akin to tuning a radio. Discontinuous static can obscure the true broadcast, but diligent adjustment can reveal messages previously drowned out. Maintaining this mental clarity necessitates a relentless curiosity, an openness to reimagine the contours of one's purpose in light of new evidence. Furthermore, the pursuit of a clear, compelling vision involves a delicate balance between focus and flexibility. While unwavering commitment provides stability, excessive rigidity can cause efforts to stall when circumstances shift unexpectedly. Now, visualize a sailor navigating a stormy sea. Fixed sails or a single route may fail when currents change. Successful navigation requires both a steadfast core and an agile adjustment of the sails, responding swiftly to the environment without losing sight of the ultimate destination. This duality becomes especially significant when unforeseen challenges threaten to derail momentum. It demands a mindset capable of pivoting without losing conviction, an ability to refine strategies while holding fast to core values. In practice, this could translate into regularly scheduled strategic reviews, where plans are reevaluated based on new data, ensuring that adaptations are rooted in purpose rather than reactionary panic. By integrating this balance, you develop a resilient mental framework that can absorb shocks while maintaining a clear sense of direction. Now, consider how internal clarity influences decision-making under pressure. Rapid, high-stakes environments threaten to cloud judgment, especially when fear or urgency dominates. At such moments, the strength of your mental image of success becomes a crucial anchor. Visualizing the desired outcome with vivid detail strengthens your emotional commitment, enabling calmer, more deliberate choices even when chaos surrounds you. It's like a pilot maintaining focus on the distant horizon during a storm. Distractions may threaten the flight, but a clear mental image keeps the pilot on course. This internal visualization reinforces confidence, reducing the likelihood of impulsive moves that could compromise progress. Moreover, by rehearsing decision pathways mentally before critical moments, you craft a mental contingency plan that can be activated swiftly when needed. This proactive approach curtails panic and ensures that every step taken aligns with your overarching purpose, turning internal vision into a tangible compass guiding choices amid uncertainty. Another subtle yet powerful element in sharpening internal clarity is cultivating patience, especially in environments where results are slow to materialize. Often, individuals mistake rapid progress for true alignment with their vision, but the real mastery lies in enduring periods of silence or stagnation without losing faith. Like a sculptor chiseling away at marble over months, the process of transformation demands resilience over immediate gratification. This rejection of short-term rewards in favor of long-term cultivation allows the vision to mature quietly beneath the surface. Patience, in this sense, becomes an act of intentional trust, trusting that consistent, deliberate effort will eventually carve out the desired shape. Such patience fosters a mindset of disciplined perseverance, preventing impulsive deviations that could dilute focus. It also creates mental space for innovative ideas to gestate, often emerging precisely during these periods of apparent stillness. Emphasizing patience ensures that your internal clarity remains not just sharp but also deep, rooted in a recognition that true breakthroughs often require time to develop fully. Finally, internal clarity demands an understanding that the pursuit of a compelling vision is a fundamentally personal journey, one that demands authenticity over imitation. It's tempting to borrow external images of success or adopt the beliefs of others to accelerate progress, but superficial alignment seldom sustains resilience in adversity. True inner clarity stems from introspection and a genuine understanding of one's core motivators, values, and purpose. It involves asking difficult questions. What drives me beyond external validation? What legacy do I wish to leave? Without these foundational elements, the vision risks becoming hollow, vulnerable to external disruptions. Conversely, a deeply personal purpose provides unwavering motivation, even when external circumstances threaten to eclipse short-term gains. This internal conviction acts as a stabilizing force, anchoring efforts in authenticity and making the pursuit inherently meaningful. In essence, cultivating this level of self-awareness transforms external chaos into a backdrop against which genuine, aligned vision can flourish, an essential step toward sustainable mastery. Reflecting on this journey so far, it becomes evident how the interplay of internal resilience, adaptive intelligence, and purposeful clarity forms a cohesive fabric, each thread strengthening the others, woven together by an underlying understanding that transformation is less a destination than an ongoing process. These ideas converge into a profound recognition that the journey of meaningful reinvention hinges not solely on external conditions, but equally on the inner architecture we cultivate, our perceptions, responses, and convictions. Like a masterful navigator, one must skillfully interpret the shifting currents of change, adjusting sails with precision while maintaining a steadfast sense of direction rooted deep within. The convergence of these elements underscores a fundamental truth, that enduring progress emerges from a dynamic equilibrium between receptive openness to disruption and disciplined commitment to growth. In this light, the notion of cultivating an internal landscape becomes a metaphor for tending an intricate ecosystem, where clarity of purpose acts as the nucleus, resilience as the roots anchoring the entity amidst storms, and adaptability as the branches stretching toward new opportunities. The synergy of these qualities nurtures a capacity to not only withstand upheaval, but to embody it as a catalyst for evolution. As each fragment of insight intertwines with the next, a pattern emerges, one that illustrates how internal mastery transforms external chaos from an adversary into an ally. It reveals that the most profound innovations often originate from within, born of the fertile ground created by disciplined reflection and relentless curiosity. This understanding elevates the potential of deliberate effort, positioning it as the key to unlocking pathways that were previously concealed in the shadows of uncertainty. Drawing these strands together, we see how the internal acts of questioning assumptions, managing emotional responses, and refining purpose serve as the crucible in which resilience and adaptability are forged. These qualities, when cultivated with intentionality, do not merely enable survival. They transmute the very act of facing disruption into an artful dance, a continuous reimagining of what is possible. The imperative, then, is to recognize that each moment of difficulty carries the seed of renewal, provided we approach it with the right mindset. The metaphor of a sculptor carving from raw material is apt here. The process involves chipping away at imperfections, revealing the beauty hidden within. In this way, setbacks and challenges cease to be mere obstacles and instead become the sculptor's tools, instrumental in shaping a more refined vision of success. The convergence of these principles suggests that mastery resides not just in reacting to upheaval but in harnessing it as a force for relentless reshaping. As we pivot toward the final reflection, the emerging picture underscores a singular truth, that the power to forge a meaningful path through tumult lies within, waiting to be awakened and directed. The accumulated insights reveal that the most resilient entrepreneurs and visionary leaders are those who treat disruption not as an endpoint, but as the very substrate for transformation. Their internal landscapes, cultivated through intentional awareness and disciplined growth, become the fertile ground from which new possibilities continually sprout. In essence, the journey of reinvention is less about the external terrain and more about the internal terrain, an ongoing expedition of self-discovery, recalibration, and unwavering commitment to purpose. Recognizing this interconnectedness, the path forward reveals itself as an invitation to deepen one's inner work, understanding that the true revolution begins within, with ripples extending outward into every act of creation and innovation.